So why do you think so many people these days are full on cutting off their parents? Stay tuned, where I'm going to be going through in this video why I think this is happening more and more. What is up, people? Welcome back to another video. For those of you who are new around here, a very warm welcome. I'm super grateful to have you come and join us. So the other day I came across this article here talking about how and why so many young people these days are no longer speaking to their parents, cutting them out, and how family estrangement seems to be kind of on the rise. And it definitely made me think and give me an idea for this video to talk more deeply. Now, I'm not just going to be talking about the actual article itself. I am going to be going through Jordan, who was part of the article, and speaking about her story of how she is now estranged from her father. However, more to the point, I feel like family estrangement is not only becoming, I don't want to use the word popular as such, but becoming, more spoken about or more widely accepted, shall we say. But I think even more so within the child-free community, for obvious reasons, is that if you're child-free and watching this, you probably know that you're kind of like the black sheep of your family, if you will. And, you might have had some run-ins and disagreements with certain members of your family, specifically your parents. And I definitely have my own story of this as well. While I'm not estranged from my parents, I have disappointed them massively, which I'm going to be going into much later on in the video. So stay tuned for that. If you have not already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button and make sure you do give this video a massive thumbs up, because it helps push this video to those who are in need of a child-free family like so. Now, in many cultures around the world, family estrangement is simply not a thing. You do not ever, cut a family member out regardless of what it is they're doing. It's also quite common in certain generations. So for example, the way a boomer reacts to a difficult family member is going to be very, very different to how a millennial or a Gen Z is going to react to a family member. And I'm going to be touching up on that very briefly later on in the video. So Jordan was raised in a Southern Baptist household in North Carolina, where she was expected to attend church multiple times a week, accept Jesus Christ as the way to salvation, and honor her mother and father. The last point was right there in the 10 Commandments. So when Jordan made the decision to stop talking to her dad, the choice stood in defiance of the lessons of her upbringing, but it was also because of them. She was tired of being told that women should submit to men, a belief ordained by the religion in which she was raised. She was finished obeying. Fair play to Jordan, because I can totally understand that. It's also a massive step of courage on her behalf when you've been raised in a certain way and to believe a certain thing, and you've had that drilled into your head from a very, very young age. It is hard when you do finally wake up. I don't believe that she actually made this decision very lightly, but she continues. Family estrangement flies in the face of what most of us are taught as children, that family is forever and the bonds of blood cannot be replicated, especially in cultures that value the cohesiveness of the group over more individualistic wants and needs. Family is not considered a choice as much as it is a fact. But for families across America right now, that fact is fraying. And this is something I was going into earlier on, because like I said, in certain cultures, you just don't do that. You don't cut people out of your family, specifically, especially your parents. Like, it's always this idea that you need to respect them regardless of whatever happens because they're your parents. And I personally think that this is a load of shit, because your parents could be like mentally and emotionally abusive or physically abusive. And then you always hear these people like, oh, but they're your family, and all these sayings like blood is thicker than water and all of this crap. And it just enforces that whatever it is that your parents may be doing to you when you're growing up that you disagree with, or that you find as an adult that strongly affected you really badly, then it kind of enforces that what they did was okay because, they were just trying their best, or they didn't know any better, or, oh, they were young. However, as I'll continue, you'll see that a lot of the time it's kind of like, oh, you can't do that because that's your dad, or you can't do that because that's your mum. And no, you do you. So when Jordan, 32, decided to leave the church in early adulthood, tension rose between her and her father. Because her parents were married, Jordan says she held back from cutting off her dad, despite the fights that they had about religion, politics, and her exit from the church. But after one last explosive phone call, Jordan hung up the phone and had a moment of clarity. She realized she was finished, done. Looking back, she says he's lucky she waited that long. While he called and texted her repeatedly, Jordan didn't budge. It's an extreme privilege to have a great relationship with your adult children, she says. I was hoping, while we weren't talking, that he would take my silence as a cue to get himself together and to apologize to me. You may have noticed I have said this in loads of other videos, and I will probably die on a hill saying this. You cannot control who the fuck you give birth to. You cannot control another human being. You have a child until they are 18. After 18, they are a fully fucking grown adult and they can make their own decisions about who they want to be, who they want to sleep with, what they want to do for a living, who they want to hang around with, who they want to vote for, which religion they want to follow or don't follow. And there is absolutely fuck all that you can do about it. And this is why so many parents these days are struggling with children like this. Well, I say children, she's a grown adult. She's 32 years of age, which means she can make as many decisions as she wants. And you're getting upset that you're having arguments about politics, about religion. Like these are massive factors that a lot of parents don't think about, because parents think that, oh, I'm going to have a child and it's going to grow up in my household. And in my household, we pray to this God and we read from this book and you're just going to do the same. But do you not think that certain children are going to grow up and start questioning things? There are so many parents out there. No wonder your kids are estranged from you, is that you are controlling every aspect of who they want to be. You're controlling them as individuals and forgetting that they are their own human being and they will make their own decisions for themselves and there's nothing you can do about it. Which brings me on to my next topic, which is actually on cultural differences. So this is what it actually said in the article. Research shows that there are cultural differences at play here. Pillemer, the Cornell professor, notes that the rate of estrangement is highest amongst white families and lowest amongst immigrant groups, Latin families, and Black families. There is much greater pressure to remain in the relationship among non-white and especially immigrant populations, he notes. People may be in extremely conflicted relationships, but they are very unlikely to say, I never want to speak to you again. When Pillemer explains this, I can't help but laugh. I think of the passive-aggressive behavior that lives at the core of some of the dynamics in my family, the unexplored conflict that is swept to the side to make room for a shared morning coffee. Part of me wonders what my family would look like if we entertained the idea that we don't have to love each other unconditionally. Another big part of me is deeply comforted that we will almost certainly always have one another. I come from an immigrant household, so my parents are immigrants. They were not born in the United Kingdom. I was probably described as a difficult child more times than I can count in my life. And I think it was simply because I just didn't bow down to certain traditions that were going on in my family because I found them fucking shit and stupid and I just wouldn't entertain it. And I think that's why my parents had such a difficult time with me. And I was always told, you're such a difficult child. You were such a difficult child. I thought there was something wrong with me. But actually, as I grew older, I was like, no, I wasn't a difficult child. I just didn't live up to your assumptions. That's all that happened. However, reading this, it was no surprise to me in a way that I can understand why the immigrant families do stick together, because they usually have a harder time in the countries that they have emigrated from. And because of that reason, they stick together, they stay within their communities, and they always have quite close-knit communities for that reason, is that they always have each other's backs. However, I do believe it's more of a generational issue as of now. So the final part here is, after making the painstaking decision to cut off a family member, young people then face the daunting task of having to continue to justify their choice, compiling years of slights and heartbreaks into a quick explanation they can relay on a third date. Undoubtedly, millennials and Gen Zers have high expectations for their loved ones and place a higher premium on their own peace, even if it comes at the expense of something as steadfast as the family unit. It would be easy to say young people just don't care about the of familial bonds, but I don't think that's true. How a family comes together and comes apart isn't rational or easily explained. It is impossibly tangled. When one thread is pulled, the whole thing can unravel, and I don't believe that anyone pulls it loosely so easily. And again, it comes back to the mindset, the generational mindset difference of, like, for example, a boomer and, for example, like a Gen Z. So nowadays, like, I'm a millennial, Gen Zers and millennials place a lot of importance, like it said, on their peace of mind, on their mental health, on their health in general. So if somebody is aggravating them or giving them heartache or making their lives difficult, cut you the fuck out, you know. Gen Zers specifically are living in a way where they're very, very conscious of what makes them happy, what makes them sad. You know, a lot of people call them sensitive. I don't believe it's more sensitive. I think people are just focusing more on their mental health now, because a lot of other generations didn't think about that and didn't focus on it. You just didn't talk about that shit. For example, boomers, they didn't talk about that shit. That's why you'll hear a lot of them be like, oh, we didn't have this problem growing up. It's like, no, you did have the problem, you just didn't talk about it. It was there, it just wasn't spoken about because it was massively taboo. So what was taboo back in the 50s and 60s is not really that much of a taboo now. Or at least it's become a lot better. Like, people are talking about stuff like mental health now, inclusion, you know, everyone talks about things a lot more. And that is why people are more comfortable when it comes to kind of cutting members out. They can do it in a sense of like, I just want to live in peace. I don't want to live under your watchful eye and your constant disappointments and all of this shit. I've definitely had difficult conversations with my parents growing up as an adult, and I'll tell you why. Is because I felt for so much of my life I was literally living for them. I was living to please them constantly. It was kind of like, is this good enough? Is this job good enough? Is this wage slip good enough? It was all very much like everything I did was to please them. So like Jordan said in the article, it was like she had to go to church and like pray to Jesus because that's what her dad told her to do. And that was what was going to make her dad happy. And when she decided to not do it, he was fuming. And it's like, well, why are you angry that your child has a different opinion than you? Was in the kitchen at the age of 10 learning how to make olive bread, supposedly for my husband. Here's a funny story. Rule number 1, you can't control who you give birth to. Guess what's really funny now? I'm married to a man who not only cooks for me, he hates olives. So I can't even make my fucking olive bread for him. That is what's really funny. So yeah, I've disappointed my parents a lot, not only by having a white husband, and then on top of that, I got married in one of the most sinful places on the planet, Vegas. I'm just gonna pop a picture here because I love my wedding story. I just love my story, guys. I love every single, own your story. I love every single part of my story. And I was made to feel so embarrassed about it growing up. Like, you know, you need to cook for your husband. If you don't, you're a failure. You need to marry into your culture. If you don't, you're a failure. You need to get married in this way, in this building for this reason. If you don't, you're a failure. And I'm literally like, no, fuck that shit. Married out of my culture, married my husband in Vegas. He does all the cooking for me because, well, I hate cooking. He loves cooking. Let him get on with it. I'm not doing none of these gender roles just for the fucking sake of it. Thank you so, so much for joining. I appreciate your presence here today. Make sure you give this video a massive thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button. I'm going to catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.